We've just got a group of papers here. They're all different shades. If I take these away, so you've got sort of different shades of white. We'll call them off-white. And originally, paper was made by hand, and it was made from linen rags. So the colour of the paper was the result of the colour of the rags that we used. The whiter the paper, the better quality the linen. And the coarser and darker the colour, so like this one here, this would be made from poorer quality rags, but also probably some rope. We call it hemp. And the rope was, old ropes were often used to make the cheaper papers that we use for wrapping. But artists really liked them because they had a much coarser texture, which you can see in raking light. And it would give the artists a different surface for them to draw on, rather than having a smoother surface. We also, what's interesting is to look at paper with transmitted light. We've got a sheet of paper here, which when you start shining light through it, you can see the structure of the paper more clearly. So in this paper, we can see these slightly lighter vertical lines here, and then these very, very fine, closer together lines running horizontally. Now these are made on the paper mould. So when paper is made by hand, it's made on a screen which has copper wires running top to bottom, which are called the chain lines, and then laid lines which are much closer together running across the screen. Also, they may have a watermark on the surface of the screen, which is copper wire that is bent and sewn onto the surface of the screen to form a design. And that was, most mills would have their own watermark, a bit like having a brand or a label, and it would be a way of identifying the paper mill from which the paper was made. So all of that, when paper is made on a screen, so paper pulp is on the wire screen, those raised wires impart a texture to paper. There's less pulp where you've got these raised wires. And so when you put paper onto transmitted light, where you have less paper, it appears lighter. So you can see the watermark here, the chain lines, and these very close laid lines. And also we see the imperfections in paper. So for example here, there's a lighter area. And that's where, when the paper was taken out of the vat, when it was made by hand, a drop of water has fallen onto the wet pulp and caused this lighter area. It's called a teardrop in paper makers, in the paper making world. So we begin to see more information when we use different light sources. If I turn this off and I use a raking light, you can see the texture, you can see the creasing, you can see perhaps some raised areas where there's a lump of fibre that hasn't been beaten well enough, so you've got a kind of a raised lump of unbeaten fibres. I'm just going to turn the paper over. Here we go, you can just see the watermark here.